was meant affectionately did not ring true. They said that Judge Kavanaugh and his friends made disrespectful sexual comments about Miss Dolphin, and that understanding at the time that was many yearbook references to her were boasts about sexual conquest, which is kind of awful in the real the real way. So yeah, it's very disturbing stuff there. But I mean, again, it kind of just shows you it's not, I mean, really directly related to the case from what I could see. But again, it just shows you character issues. The people who have been pounding Judge Kavanaugh as a virtue of like a man of virtue, like it makes their claims look less and less substantiated here.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he lied about what Renata alumnus meant. He lied about what Devil's Triangle meant. He lied about what boofing or boffing meant. And you could come back and say, well, these are just high school hijinks, and they're not that important as lies. And why are these Democratic senators asking these silly questions of a grown man that he wrote when he was just a teenager? And you can make all kinds of excuses for the yearbook pages. You could make the argument that he's grown since then. Once he became married and had children, he became a more responsible adult, and he can be forgiven for these things. I don't agree. I think that people who act this way in high school, while they can grow up a bit, I still think it points to something central to their character that never leaves them. And I think it's very disturbing that you get a person like this, in a position of power, even in the position that he's in now. I mean, he's a federal appellate judge, and it's just appalling. I mean, I would seriously think about finding ways to impeach this guy, because he's not the kind of person, character-wise, that you want as a federal judge, much less a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's no doubt about that. But it just shows that there's a lot of people who just didn't act that way in high school. They didn't brag about girls like that. I guess you could say, it was a different era. But I know, the people who I hold dear in life, my relatives, the older adults that I know. I'm pretty sure they had nothing like that. It's not just something, I could picture people in my school, who I go to school with now, who are kind of act a little bit inappropriately. I mean, I guess there could be some in every school, but the far majority of people are not like that. The point I'm trying to make is, in defense of high school students, that activity is just not normal, and just speaks very poorly, again, to his character, as well as, I guess you could say his judicial record does not really reflect too well on him under closer examination.
Right. I mean, there's always a fast and loose group in every high school. They tend to be the really popular, socially popular kids.
The partiers.
Right? The football players, the jocks. That kind of all that stereotype, and it's true. I'd like, as a point of reference, I'd like to see Neil Gorsuch's yearbook page. Neil Gorsuch went to the same high school as Brett Kavanaugh. And he doesn't have any of these allegations. Now, in fairness to Kavanaugh, he didn't have these allegations until very recently either. There could be a side to Neil Gorsuch we don't know about. But I just don't think so. Just the way, the way you see Neil Gorsuch talk, the way he carries himself, he just seems to be a much more respectable man. But it would still be fun to look at his page and mark the differences between the two. I'm sure you'd find some.
Yeah, I'm sure there would be. It's hard to imagine Brett Neil Gorsuch coming out in the court and just yelling at the Democrats, calling them a national embarrassment. But I mean, again, on the other hand, I mean, you kind of have this impression that it could be there's like some sort of culture with these prep schools, but you just don't know. And I think that would be a very, very interesting case of experiment, which is to look in Neil Gorsuch's yearbook. And I did not know they went to the same high school. That's interesting. And kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, because it'll prove, like, I kind of tend to lean toward the idea that it's a culture. There's a very bad behavior coming in, and I mean the headmaster, the longtime headmaster of the Georgetown Prep School, was recently caught for abusing children, and the first person to defend him on Facebook or whatever was Mark Judge, and that kind of just showed, like, was there a culture, or was it just like one person? Like, and it would be interesting to see how Neil Gorsuch went through that same situation, and yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, we should also point out that the American Bar Association is very, very close, I think, to renouncing Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation. I think on Friday they came out and said that they really wanted to see an FBI investigation. This was before they actually got it done. And the ACLU, which only rarely comes out for or against nominees to the Supreme Court, has come out against Judge Kavanaugh. So, and also the president of Yale, okay, his where he went to law school, has come out and said that Judge Kavanaugh should not sit on the Supreme Court. So there's lots of outside pressure, and all this pressure is, zeroing in on just less than a handful of Republican senators, and we're just going to have to wait out this week and see what happens.
Yeah, this week is going to be very interesting, that's for sure. All right. There is and I do want to kind of end the show on a little bit of a thought-provoking note, some food for thought, if you will. And Mehdi Hasan, who is a journalist for The Intercept, he wrote a piece, an opinion piece, very bluntly titled, it's called "Pack the Supreme Court." And if you don't know what that means, if you don't know what that means, pack the courts is kind of a leftist idea, and it was first really tried by FDR, back when he was in power, and what he was trying to do was just appoint pretty much as many justices as possible to the Supreme Court, and that's something they could do because the Constitution says nothing about 9 justices. It's nothing about making sure that that's the way it should be. Like, there's no reason for putting 9 justices, therefore you can pretty much appoint as many as you want. And that's the whole possibility of packing the court. So yeah, Brett Kavanaugh did move one step closer to the United States Supreme Court on Friday, Mehdi Hasan says. Despite telling brazen lies, as we mentioned, from the Senate Judiciary Committee, and despite Christine Blasey Ford's compelling testimony, Republicans on the committee voted in favor of advancing Kavanaugh's nomination to the Senate for a full vote. Only a new FBI investigation into Ford's allegations, time limit to a week, now stands in the way of Donald Trump's entrenching a hard-right conservative majority into the Supreme Court for a generation or more. So to be clear, a majority on the court would be an utter disaster for women, people of color, and for the poor. On one upside of Kavanaugh's raw and angry rant on Thursday, he referred to the Democrats on the panel as "you people" and a disgrace, and accused them of exacting revenge on behalf of the Clintons. It's that it exposed the court for what it is, a partisan political battlefield, not a disinterested defender of the Constitution. So it's time for the liberals and the left to consider court packing. When they next control the House, the Senate, and the White House, the Democrats should add at least 2 new seats to the Supreme Court, and they should fill them with left-wing and well-qualified women, ideally left-wing and well-qualified women of color. They could even call it court balancing, which could be interesting there as well. What's your reaction to this idea?
I think it's a bad idea. Well, first of all, I wasn't aware of the fact that you could, up the number from 9. So this is new to me. But to me, it sounds pretty dangerous. I mean, the fact that you can pack the court in a partisan way like that, it just doesn't seem right. And that kind of activity could spiral out of control. I mean, who knows how large the court could get after a time, right?
Yeah.
The way we seesaw presidents between Republican and Democrat all the time, you could see the court rising in size from 9 to 11 to 13 to 15 to 17 to 19. Where's it going to stop?
About like 33, and they're like, whoa, this is too far.
So no, I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I do. On the other hand, though, I am kind of a little bit more inclined to it because it's just like the reality of having a conservative Supreme Court for 30 years and the already just deep trouble we're already in. It seems like it's kind of like it's an action that I would normally hesitate on taking, but just with the severity of the way the circumstances are right now, just for climate regulation, for the poor, for voting rights, for abortion. Like, there are so many things that this court, like, they could take away the rights of so many disenfranchised people. It could be a very big and disturbing situation for the next 30 years. And it's prolonged, and it's no way of rejecting it. So, I mean, there's many different ways we can hold the Supreme Court in check. And I think packing the court is an interesting idea there. But I do think, again, it should be within reason. Like, obviously not like nominating 5. It may sound extreme. This is the continuation of the article, but it isn't. This, again, Mehdi Hassan. The Constitution allows for Congress to decide on the number of Supreme Court justices. There is nothing magical about the number 9. Post Zach Carter observed in June, the court was founded in 1789 with just 6 justices and has included as many as 10 from 1863 to 1866 when a Republican in the legislature intentionally shrank the court size to 7 justices to prevent Andrew Johnson from making any appointments. Nor is 9 some sort of global norm. UK Supreme Court consists of 12 justices. Israel's has 15, and India, there are 25 Supreme Court justices, up to a maximum of 31. The idea of expanding the size of the Supreme Court will get traction if the Democrats take the White House and Congress in 2020. Constitutional scholar Erwin Chemerinsky, the dean of UC Berkeley Law Schools, told the Los Angeles Times in July, it is the only way to keep there from being a very conservative court for the next 10 to 20 years. And that seems to be something, I mean, personally, I just am so objective, and I just object to the idea of a conservative Supreme Court for 10 to 30 years. I just object to that so much. I just think, okay, we got to do what we got to do here. It's just something that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that point of view. It's just that when one side starts that tactic, then the other side will do the same, and then we're right back, into that just another technique of trying to gain the upper hand in the court. And to me, I think it could just get out of control and make the court even more partisan than it is now. And I don't really know how to balance that partisanship, except that I think the most important thing that we do is change the Senate rule back to needing 60 votes to confirm a judge. It's the only way you can get more moderate judges on the court. You have to have, typically you need a bipartisan agreement about who should be there. And I think, removing that stipulation and making it just a majority is really going to hurt the court going forward. And we're going to end up with more people like Judge Kavanaugh, who say that with the opposition party is blocking them over revenge.